Welcome back to Another Triathlon Podcast brought to you by Mana Apparel. I'm Jenna Sayre and joined as always by Josh and Fede, but this week we've got someone on to join us for the podcast, and I am sure you will absolutely love hearing some of her stories, and it's a voice you'll definitely recognize. So this week we have got the knowledgeable, the talented, the lovely Belinda Granger joining us today. How are you doing, Belinda? We're so happy to have you on.
Oh, look, I'm very excited. When you asked me if I had the spare time to do this, absolutely. I've been following this podcast for a while now, so really love it, and it's an honor to be on it.
Thank you. We appreciate that. I'm happy to hear that you at least heard of us before, but
of course.
Everything you've been doing here. But we wanted to take it back a little bit because obviously these days the generation of triathletes out there will know you as a commentator, which you do with Challenge Family and the commentating on Challenge Roth and a number of other races. But you started out as an athlete in this sport, and that's how I first knew you. So I wanted to hear a little bit just how you got into triathlon and how this crazy journey started.
Jenna, now you're asking me to go way, way back. Some of our listeners might not have even been born back in those days. But I fell into the sport purely by accident. I was always a very sporty kid. My parents were both very sporty. And I was one of those kids that just wanted to do everything. So, it'd be netball for 6 months and I'd get bored. Then it'd be swimming for 6 months and I'd get bored. And I just kept switching and changing. And the one sport that I did love and I did hold on to till I was about 18 was gymnastics. And that was one that I never got bored of, and one that I was good at it, but not brilliant. And I got to 18 years of age, finished school, started uni, and of course stopped with gym. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror one day. I think it was probably my second year of university, and I did not like what I was looking at. I was not this fit, energetic, healthy person anymore. I was overweight. I'd been, obviously university, you go out, you go drinking. I stopped doing any sort of regular exercise. And before I knew it, I didn't recognize myself. And I was so disappointed that I'd let myself go. And I thought, okay, this is it. End of second year university, you've got to find something. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I've done everything. What's going to keep me incentivized to stay in something for a long period of time? Because I knew whatever I needed to do, it needed to be something that I did for a while because I'd let myself go for so long. And I'd heard of this sport, triathlon. I didn't know too much about it, but we had a local club down at Bondi because I was at Sydney University at the time, and I lived in Coogee. And Bondi Beach had this club called the Brat Club, the Bondi Running and Triathlon Club. So I had two other great. We were the brats. We were brats, all of us. And I remember asking friends and saying, hey, should we try it out? I mean, even if we go there just to do the running side of it to start with. Anyway, long story short, I fell in love with the sport of triathlon. It took me all of probably one season and I was absolutely hooked. But I only ever thought I would do it again to keep fit, to be healthy. I was very competitive. I always had been my entire life. But I went into this sport not with that in mind because I thought I'm not going to be very good at it. I'm starting at, 22 years of age. But before long, I was hooked, and I started as an age group athlete, made my way through age group worlds, won my age group at Worlds. I remember when they were in Perth. I think that was back in, I can't remember, early 90s. And then by the end of the 90s, I met my now husband, Justin, who actually told me that I could be pretty good at this. And if I wanted to, he thought I had what it takes to be a professional athlete. And I remember laughing at him thinking, no chance. But I listened to him, and I'm so glad I did because I don't listen to him very often. And the rest is history. I think I turned pro in the very late 90s and then retired in 2015, having had a career in triathlon that I absolutely never expected that I would have. So that's the short version, but I'm sure you don't want to hear the longer version.
And you still haven't left the sport. So, I mean, triathlon's not getting rid of you anytime soon either.
No. And, don't you feel like the sport of triathlon has that hold over you?
Yes.
It becomes such an integral part of your life. Like all of my friends either still are or have been triathletes. And now a lot of us have moved out of racing, but they're still in the sport. Like you've got Beth and Luke McKenzie, who are two of my best friends, who have now their apparel. I've got other friends, Courtney Ackery, who works for World Triathlon, and I've got other friends here that have got a running shop or shoe shop. So everyone's still involved in some capacity in the sport of triathlon. So I couldn't imagine my life without it, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're in that age group to professional transition, what was that point where you decided, hey, I'm actually going to give this a shot as a pro athlete? And how did that feel?
You know, I was lucky. We had the Olympics here in Sydney in the year 2000. And I was on the cusp of deciding whether I should really have a good crack at this. And I remember I was still doing short course at that stage. I hadn't moved into longer distance racing. And I remember they had the test event on the Olympic circuit. And I decided, they gave me a start. They said, you know, everyone had to put in and ask if they could have a start. And I got given that start. And I loved it, being able to perform on a big stage like that, on the test event of what was going to be the Olympic triathlon course. And I don't even remember where I finished, but it was reasonable. And from then on, I said, you know what, this is absolutely what I want, because I thrived on it. I loved the cheering. I loved the crowds that came out and watched and supported. And I just loved the competition. I loved competing. And I think that was the catalyst that really made me decide right then and there that this was where I was going to put all my energy. It took a few more years before I gave up, because I was working full-time as a teacher. I gave up my full-time job, but I was lucky with teaching because they were so good to me. Whenever I needed to go overseas, they'd let me have time off. So once I got a little bit of finance behind me, then I gave up work, and then I really decided that this is it. I'm going to be a full-time athlete for as long as I can.
Awesome. So, question. You started gymnastics at a young age. Was the Olympic dream always in the back of your head? And when you switched to triathlon, was it like, okay, I'm going to pursue the Olympics now in triathlon, now that the gymnastics door has been shut, or you walked away from that? Was that like a goal of yours, or were you just in it to compete and to have fun and see what was happening?
Now, that's a really, really good question. I think every young girl and boy, you have dreams and aspirations when you're young. And I used to watch the Olympics, gymnastics in the Olympics all the time. It was my favorite sport, wouldn't miss it. And yeah, I'd be lying if I didn't say, you know, when I was young, I started gymnastics when I was 9. And when I was a young 12, 13-year-old, that was my dream, I wanted to be good enough to make it to the Olympics. I learned fairly quickly that I wasn't good enough to make it to the Olympics in gymnastics.
Hey, but gymnastics is a top sport.
Absolutely. But, you know, I'm so glad that I had all that time, because I truly think that the reason I was able to have such a long career in the sport with very little injury was because of my background in gymnastics. The foundations and the body awareness you get from gymnastics, and that foundation, super strong core, glutes, I think it set me up for whatever sport I was going to choose. I think it set me up really, really well. And if you look at my career, I had maybe one time in the whole of my professional career where I had to take some time off when I was diagnosed with endofibrosis of the external iliac artery, which is what Fenella Langridge has just gone through. And that was literally the only injury I ever had. And I have to account that to my career in gymnastics. But rolling forward to the sport of triathlon, I don't think I ever, even when I decided to turn pro, I don't know if I ever thought I would make it to the Olympics in the Olympic distance, because it was right at the time when I first started racing professionally. That's when Olympic distance triathlon was non-drafting. I was not a bad swimmer, but I certainly wasn't a great swimmer. I was a good bike rider and an average runner. But when it was non-drafting, it was fine. But as soon as they changed and it was drafting, and I went into the Olympics, obviously, as a draft legal, it's sort of, that's when I had to decide to move up to long distance, so half distance triathlon, and then eventually onto the full distance into Ironman. So I don't think I had that same sort of dream that I had as a gymnast of making it to the Olympics, but I did know that once I'd done that test event that I wanted to be a professional athlete in the sport of triathlon in some capacity. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, yeah, like you said, every little kid dreams about being in that big stage, whether it is the Olympics or playing at the World Series or the Super Bowl. And it struck to me. I was looking at your career, and you seem like a very durable athlete. Like injuries were not part of your vocabulary at all. Like just like the injury you mentioned before that, and I truly believe that gymnastics had a lot to do with that. But when you jumped into triathlon, how did you stay durable? Because I know, like, I grew up playing team sports, and we were always in the gym. When I started doing tri, I forgot about the weights. I was like, just swim back and run. Don't tell Jenna I told you this. But did you were you like this as well, or were you always like very strict into like conditioning your body and making it healthy?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I did get into, when I was at uni, and obviously I told you I stopped doing sport and got into the party scene a little too hard at the first year. And I think that happened because I'd been so strict all through high school. You know, I never went to parties. I never went out drinking. It just wasn't part of my makeup. I was always either studying or doing some sort of sport. And I think that first year of university where I met all new friends, and it opened me up to a world that I hadn't been a part of before. So in typical Belinda personality fashion, it was all in or nothing. And so for that first year, I let myself go. And then before I actually found the sport of triathlon, I started going back to the gym and getting back into aerobics, because back in those days, you know, aerobics was a big deal. So I started doing that again. And I think that because I did a long period where I was doing aerobics and concentrating on my core again, getting everything, my foundation strong, when I finally did decide to step into the sport of triathlon and move out of the gym, I had that foundation back. So everything, maybe it wasn't as strong as what it was when I was in school and doing gymnastics, but I think I got most of it back, and it set me up for being able to go straight into the sport of swim, bike, run and not lose that. And I still did, because I loved it so much. I still did go back to the gym and do the odd aerobic class every now and again. So I think that really helped. And I knew, because I'd been doing it for a while, I knew the only problem I had when I first started doing the sport of triathlon was really bad hamstring insertion issues, which I think is quite common. But I knew what I needed to do to keep them at bay. And so I went back to the gym and I'd work on that. So I was lucky in that respect. And it's funny because I remember Triathlon Magazine doing an article once, and it was, you know, Mirinda Carfrae's got out of this world running ability. Chrissie Wellington's got out of this world cycling ability. And when they came to mentioning what I had, it was nothing to do with swim, bike, run. It was just my durability. Belinda has out of this world durability. And that's what I was renowned for. It wasn't that I was a great swim, bike runner. It was just that I was consistent and I was durable, which, you know, I think my old coach Sutton once gave me a compliment, and it was, Belinda, you know what you remind me of? You remind me of an old German tank. And I'm like, what? That's a compliment? He said, yeah, you know, the German tanks, they were reliable. They never broke down. I'm like, I walked away scratching my head going, well, okay, I think that was a compliment, but didn't really sound like one. But yeah, I mean, what he meant to say was that I'm durable and hardy. I never used to break down. I barely used to blow up. And so often that's how I would win my races. Didn't often lead races, but I used to be able to stay strong all the way through, and then others would blow up around me, and then I'd be the last a woman standing.
There we go. And it's funny you say that, a compliment like that from Sutto, who definitely had a reputation of throwing all the eggs at the wall, and whoever didn't crack, that's who he was going to.
I was one of the uncrackables, exactly.
When you talk about your training, I mean, nowadays it's all out there. It's on Strava, it's on YouTube channels. We see everything everyone's doing, and then you get the ones that want to hide it, whatever that may be. But what was your training weeks like back then, leading into a full? And like, does it amaze you what the time that these people are putting into it now? Or you're just like, no, we were doing it then, we just didn't show everyone?
Yeah, well, the thing is, back in my day, there was no such thing as training peaks. So you had nowhere to put it. I've still got, actually, it's funny because we're doing some renovations on our house and we've had to put a lot of stuff in the garage. And I was going through some old diaries, journals, and this is how we used to record our training in diaries. And you'd basically write in them every day what you were doing. And then at the end of the day, you'd go back and fill in how those sessions went. And I go back and look at them now and you forget. I mean, these diaries were really, like, I put in a lot of detail. I mean, it must have taken me hours every afternoon to fill these in. But yeah, you go back. I loved training when I was training with Sutto, because every day would start the same. He's like, well, you've got to treat your training like it is your full-time job, because that's what it is. Same mentality. If you start work at 7, you are expected to be at work at 7 every morning. And so our job started at 7. We were expected to be at the pool at 7 o'clock every morning. We would swim, that we would know. And then we'd all get out of the pool and he would tell each of us individually what the rest of the day entailed. So we didn't know ahead of time. So there was no planning. There was no saving ourselves, because we actually didn't know what we were doing apart from that swim session. And it was nice because there was no stressing about sessions the night before or overthinking it. You got told that morning and you went home and you got it done. And I liked the simplicity of that. I think we didn't have lactate testing or any of these other tests that people are doing. There wasn't even wind tunnel testing back in my day. And don't get me wrong, I think it's great. I think that's part of the reason we're seeing so many incredible times being set in our sport, and for our sport to continue to grow and evolve, well, it's needed. But I must admit, back in the day, I did like the simplicity of it. We didn't have to put it up on social media, because there was, I mean, I think Facebook existed back when I was in my prime, but Instagram, I think, was only just coming on right when I was starting to wind it down and retire. So, you know, you got up every day, you trained, you ate and you slept, and it was that simple, which was kind of nice, I must admit.
Yeah, absolutely. And before, you didn't have to have an Instagram to get sponsors and stuff. It was all
no, exactly. Oh, I think about it, and it's so it's funny because, you know, I've just watched right before I jumped on the call today. I was watching Sam Laidlow's YouTube from Roth, which is, if you haven't watched it, watch it. It's bloody brilliant, as I knew it would be. And I think about the time and effort and I know he's got a videographer that does it, but he's still got to invest time into it as well. And I think far out, you know, not only are these guys training 25, 30 hours a week, they're doing all the social media, and then they're having to put out YouTube videos after, you know, sessions and races. And it's just this whole production now that I look back and I think, I don't know. I really don't know if I would have had the energy or the inclination to have been able to do it. But yeah, hats off to professional athletes these days. It definitely is a full-time job.
It is, for sure. And before we kind of move more into what you're doing now and everything going on with Challenge, I just wanted to ask kind of what performances in your career really stand out to you? Like, what's something that you're most proud of that you've done in the sport?
Oh, I think without a doubt, and I know it's going to sound a little cliched, but my win in Roth in 2005, because that one win really proved to me that I had what it took. Because I almost felt like a little bit of an imposter because I'd come from an age group background. I didn't have a background in swim, bike, run. I felt I did get a little bit of imposter syndrome. And because I'd never really thought about doing it as a professional athlete, I was quite happy just to do it as an age group athlete, do as well as I could in the age group ranks, and then just be happy with that. And once I decided that I was going to take it seriously and become a professional athlete, you almost every now and again you need that justification that you've made the right decision. I mean, I'd gone to university for 4 years to become a phys ed teacher, and I gave that away. And I was so worried what my parents would think about that, whether they'd think it was an absolute waste of time. They were incredibly supportive, which still to this day I didn't expect them to be as supportive as they were. But that race in Roth in 2005 really sealed the deal and made me think, well, this is an international race, one of the biggest races on the planet outside of the World Championships, and I've just won it. What more justification do I need? So that win was the most significant win in my career, even, you know, all the way through. I raced World Championships in Kona 10 times, and I placed well. I think I placed top 10 5 times, but it never had that significance that Roth had. Obviously, that's why I continue to go back there. I think this was my 20 something year. It's crazy, 20th year in being in Roth. So utter madness. But yeah, that was the most significant win of my career, and probably one of the most significant times too. And it's funny, you think, why do you need that justification? But I think everyone, when you're spending that much time on something and you know it's taking you away from family, friends, you sometimes need to have that justification that you're doing it for the right reasons.
Well, I think you justified that, and you've definitely justified your follow-up career to all of that, because we enjoy listening to you. Did you have those same thoughts going into the broadcast world and doing the commentary as well?
I literally fell into that world by accident, a little bit like triathlon, to be honest. My story, obviously I retired in 2015. I remember being in Kona, watching in I think it was 2014. And at that particular point, Felix Volsurfer, who had owned Challenge Family, started Challenge Family, had sold it or moved it on to Zibi Zuflik, who I'd known from a lot of my career because he sponsored me with Power Bar and had been very, very generous and wonderful to me as a sponsor. And Power Bar were one of Power Bar I had practically my entire career. And I remember sitting down with him and another lady that I work with now, Victoria Murray Orr, and they sat me down and they said, have you had to think about what you're going to do when you retire? And I said, no, not really. I suppose I'm going to go back to teaching. And that's the only logical thing to do. And they said, well, would you be interested in coming and joining Challenge Family and doing something for us? I said, well, yeah, what? And they said, well, we'll let you think about that. You can think about a role that you think you can play within Challenge Family. We're behind you. And so I went back home to Justin. I said, can you believe this? They've just basically told me I can make up my own job. Which is basically what they did. And so Justin and I sat down in our little condo just on Alihi Drive. And I thought, well, what do I love? What am I passionate about? What do I think our sport needs? And I just thought about my time as a pro athlete and what I found difficult. And one of the things I found difficult was just finding races that would want me, helping. And so I really wanted to help professional athletes make it easier for them to get to races, to apply for races, to get pro packages, so support at certain races. So I went back and said, well, what about a professional liaison? So liaising between our race directors and all of these professional athletes and working both sides of the fence, helping our professional athletes get to all of our events around the world. And similarly, on the other hand, helping our race directors get some great athletes to their events, because we know that if you've got a great professional field, there's more media coverage, meaning there's more people around the world know about your race a lot more. That brings on sponsorship. It's that that snowballing effect. And they loved it. And so I started as the pro liaison. And from there, I think I just accidentally fell into the role of commentary. Back then, there was not a lot of live commentary. Obviously, the big races like the World Championships had it, but right at that stage, Roth never had it. We just had live updates. So my first few years post-racing was spent on the back of a motorbike doing videos, like hanging off the motorbike, doing crappy videos of me and like doing this. And I actually loved it, but it's a lot better now that we've become a little bit more professional and we have a production company behind it. But yeah, that's how I fell into commentary. And I do love it because I am so incredibly passionate about the athletes that I work with. We're so lucky in our sport that the professional athletes involved are all not just incredible athletes, but they're magnificent human beings. Some of the athletes I deal with on a daily basis, and I'll bring him up right now because obviously I've just come from Roth. The pro athletes that were at Roth, and for example, Sam Laidlow, Laura Phillip, who were both the winners, truly remarkable human beings, both on and off the race course. And it's an absolute pleasure to be able to help them, assist them, work with them. So when I do commentary, I don't find it difficult because these are people that I genuinely love to talk about. So,
and it comes across, that's something we've talked about on the podcast a few times, is something that's missing from a lot of the commentary is, knowledge about the athletes, but you really seem to care about these athletes. You have insights into their lives. You follow what they're doing. You know about their personal lives as well as their training and racing. And you come in so well prepared because they actually mean something to you. And that makes such a massive difference. Now, are you doing a ton of research beforehand? Are you just talking to them? Like, how do you have all this going into the race day?
Yeah, it's a lot of everything. Obviously, in my daily job, I'm liaising and connecting with these athletes a lot. So I do get to know a lot about them. And because there is that trust that we've built up with each other now over the years, because I think they genuinely know that I have their best interest at heart. they tell me things that they might not otherwise tell other people, like when they're suffering injuries or sickness or personal problems. And not that I blurt those all out on the live coverage, but it gives me a better understanding of where they're at. And sometimes I think Nikki Bartlett was a great example in Roth. You know, she came into the race having not had the greatest of years, and she's a brilliant athlete and another superhuman being. She's incredibly well liked amongst her peers, which says everything. And so I knew that she was going into Roth, and it was going to be a bit of a gamble because, you know yourself, you can be as physically prepared as possible, but if you're not mentally 100% there on the day, it can be a struggle. And I think knowing certain things about people, it makes it easier for me to commentate on them. You know, we could see Nikki go through that really rough patch on the run. I think that was when Alana Siffert was able to catch her. But all I wanted Nikki to do from that point on was just to rally and just to hold what she had, because I knew that finishing in the top 5 of Nikki was going to be a dream come true, considering what she'd been through. And I think I do a lot of research as well. Like, I have massive amounts of notes. And the funny thing is I come to these commentary boxes and I've got notes stacked up this high, and I do study them days beforehand. But the race is so dynamic on race day. You rarely get a chance to actually even look at all this information. And I think when I came in on race day morning with Sebi, and Sebi's like, "Oh my God, you've got like a Bible there full of information." But it's more of a safety thing to have it there in case you get a mental blank or something happens. But it's funny, once that gun goes off and the race starts to evolve, I just use my background knowledge that of having talked with these pros on a daily basis. I do try and catch up with a lot of them race week, have a coffee with them just to see how things are going. I mean, I was lucky enough to stay with Sam Laidlow. He invited my husband and I to go and stay with him for a few days. So I got to see him training in his daily life and learn a lot about Sam those 3 days. Sam is the sort of athlete that if all the ducks are lined up in his personal life, you know, with his family, with his friends, then he is capable of anything. And he wasn't lying when he said he went into that race underdone. I know he was underdone. I know he's had really massive issues with his immune system and with sickness. And he wasn't lying. He'd hardly done any training. And there was that big question mark on was he physically well prepared enough to win a race like Roth? But I knew if he could mentally put himself in the game, then he's such an incredibly talented and competitive person that he would be able to pull off the win. And it was great to see that unfold because it's exactly as we thought it would be. But you never know. But this is the exciting part about commentary. Sebi and I, we catch up in the days beforehand with the production company and we go through a range of different scenarios and we just wait to see what one plays out on race day, which makes it really exciting.
Sam might have learned a new way to race too, because now he just needs to know that he's not in first, but think he's in first. Or, I mean,
if you listen to his YouTube, that's it. Yeah. He talks about that. We had no idea that that's what he thought, that he had no idea that Jonas was off the front. But, you know, I think it's also taught Sam. Sam thought he 100% relied on his bike. If he didn't get off the bike in first in a race, he thought his chances of winning were next to zero. And he just proved to himself in Roth that he doesn't necessarily need to be this uber biker that has to be off the front with a, you know, X amount lead, that he can actually win it because he's a bloody good runner as well. And I think that was the beauty of that race, that I think he's got the confidence now going into world champs that he's solid across all three. It's just a matter of this being right on the day.
Absolutely. And we were kind of chatting before the podcast how the last time we had seen each other was sub-7, sub-8. And we got a little bit into how crazy is it that we're seeing these women's performances just level up in a way we haven't seen before, where sub-8 is going to happen amongst the women.
It's funny. We spoke about it quite a lot in the press conference and leading into Roth, because obviously Laura had just come from Hamburg where she was so close to doing it. And crazy. And Felix Volser, who obviously owns Roth, loves records. I mean, it's always been a big thing. Magnus Ditlev, keeps setting new records in Roth, and he'd love to have, and this year he would love to have had a world record in the women's race, but I have no doubt that it will be done. Laura didn't come into the race with that in mind, and I think it put a lot of pressure on Laura that she didn't necessarily want or need. And I remember talking to her and I said, you know what, just block it out. We don't need any records. We just want some fantastic racing, which is what she gave us. And she did. I mean, her race was textbook in Roth, and she did exactly what we expected her to do. But, you know, roll back to that sub-7, sub-8, and I remember looking at Kat and her team and Nicola and thinking, wow, this is just, it was amazing. It was an amazing event. But I remember walking away thinking, oh, we've got years and years and years and years before, if it ever happens. And to think that we have got right now, I can think of at least 3 or 4 athletes that are 100% capable on the day of breaking 8 hours. It's crazy for me to think. And particularly after watching Lake Placid last weekend and seeing Solveig in only her second race over the distance. I mean, this woman is scary good. I have no doubt that who is going to be first is either going to be Solveig, Kat Matthews, Laura Phillip, or Lucy Charles Barclay. I mean, there's that small handful of women that are absolutely going to do it. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, it's a hypothetical question, but with today's technology and bikes and everything that we have right now, who do you think someone like Chrissie Wellington could have gone sub-8 in her prime, like in today's day and age?
Yeah, that's, I mean, we've been discussing, we've had many a conversation over a bottle of wine about that. I definitely think she could have, because back in, what people probably don't remember or don't realize, I was lucky enough, fortunate enough I was training with Chrissie from when she first joined our squad. And I remember that first day when she turned up and saw her train for the first time, and we were blown away. And I mean, this is a woman that won Kona on a bloody road bike with clip-ons back in the day, remember? I mean, and wore a floppy tri-suit. There was no aerodynamics whatsoever involved with Chrissie Wellington and many of her wins. She might have started, I think she got on a TT bike, you know, towards the end of her career, of course. But there was no aero testing. There were no carbon shoes. I mean, she wasn't even worried about numbers flapping around on her back or her tri-suit being undone so that was flapping around, or aero helmets. There was literally nothing. I mean, her hair, you know, she had that beautiful curly hair that used to hang out and flap around. I mean, think about it now. It's insane. And she'd still fly past all of us like we're standing still. So she was absolutely ahead of her time by years. And it would be amazing to see. I mean, there's a small handful of athletes like that in the women's field that were ahead of their time that I would love to see now with all the technology we've got now. I mean, it would be incredible. But yeah, hypothetically speaking, of course, but I think Chrissie Wellington is a standout in that particular department. Yeah.
Yeah. And second part of this question, like, to my opinion, you raced alongside 2 of the probably top 3 greatest triathletes of all time on the female side, Chrissie Wellington and Mirinda Carfrae. Yeah. How did you stay like grounded or like focused and centered? And because you had to go out there and compete, and like you mentioned, you were training with Chrissie, she joined your
absolutely
squad. Like, how did you stay true to yourself and not wanting to be Chrissie 2.0 in a way, and just staying true to Belinda?
Yeah. You know what? That's where our coach really stepped up, because there was one point there where we had 5 of the best long distance athletes in the world in our squad. And it could have quite easily have blown to smithereens, because you're right, we're also incredibly competitive. And who wants to keep going, turning up to a race thinking, well, first place is off the table. We're all racing for second because Chrissie's going to win. But what he was very, very good at doing was separating us and pushing us to races that he knew that we would thrive. And so, you know, he would push me off to Lake Placid, or he'd push me off to Ironman Canada. And Chrissie would stay in Europe and do some of the really crazy mountainous races, like with climbing. And so he'd separate us, and we rarely raced together. I think the only time we would ever really race together was in Kona. And the only other time, funny story, Chrissie had just done her very first full distance race, Ironman Korea. And the next weekend, it was 70.3 Singapore. First time there was ever a 70.3 in Singapore. And we were all doing it. And I thought, this is bizarre. What? Our whole squad did it. Now one of our major sponsors was DBS Bank, which was based in Singapore. So our entire squad raced this race. I think it was the one and only time. The only other time I can remember was Outdoors Triathlon, which we all did. But I remember us all racing and I'm thinking, oh, this is going to get a bit shirty. Anyway, long story short, I had a really good swim. I don't know what I did, but I outswam both Mirinda and Chrissie that day. And this was back in the day when they used to send pro men and pro women off on one gun. We started together.
Wow.
Yeah, we're talking some time ago now. And I remember getting out of the swim with the lead. I think there was maybe 4 lead men off the front, and then I got out with the main group of pro men and rode with them. And so I ended up getting off the bike with about a 6-minute lead over Mirinda and Chrissie, and they never caught me. So I actually won. And it's the only time I can actually say that I beat Mirinda, Carfrae and Chrissie Wellington in the same race. But I tell a lot of people.
That's awesome.
I don't talk about the 20 other times that they absolutely annihilated me, but that's all right.
Important.
It doesn't matter.
It's an interesting topic nowadays too, because now you get the Norwegians doing every race together. They're the anti of what you guys are. Literally, they don't go to races without each other.
No, it's crazy. And now you're adding Casper Stornes to that equation as well. I mean, we're used to Christian and Gustav doing it together. Now you've got a third, and it's not unusual for them to go 1, 2, 3, or at least have the potential to go 1, 2, 3 because they're that good. And I like it. It takes a very strong human, because let's be honest, we're particularly professional athletes are insanely competitive creatures. And hats off to these boys that when they're on that start line, it's each for themselves. But as soon as the race is over, they're able to switch it over to their best mates. And I think you think about the amount of time that these 3 must spend together in training, and they truly are best friends. And I think it's kind of refreshing that they are able to do it. And I don't think it's an act. I think it's legit. And I think it shows what sort of people that these 3 boys are. They're really genuinely good guys. A little crazy, but aren't we all? But yeah, they're really decent people.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable to see that kind of group performing. But we wanted to ask you a question. I know that Challenge Roth and Race Ranger are going to have an announcement coming out, and they're doing a press conference in a few hours here. Unfortunately for us, it's going to be at 2 a.m. with our North American time. So we were wondering if we could get a little bit of an insight into what information you guys kind of got from Race Ranger and how you're using that in the challenge races right now.
So obviously it all began, we have a compulsory pro briefing on the Friday before Challenge Roth, and it's done very, very well. And at that briefing is obviously all of the professional athletes. We allow coaches, but we do not allow any media. And then we have obviously all of the officials from the DTU, as well as the head official from the team in Roth, and myself as pro liaison. And then Felix actually ends up coming too. He doesn't come for the entire meeting, but he's there for a section of it. And we'd started the meeting, we'd gone through everything, and Felix walked in halfway through. I think we were discussing drafting penalties, obviously blue cards being shown yellow. And Sam Laidlow raised his hand and asked a question, because we said we're using Race Ranger. It will be 12-meter rule, but we will be using Race Ranger. And Sam raised his hand and said, well, is this data from Race Ranger going to be made? Can we make it public? And there was a silence over the room, because obviously after every race, I'm not sure if people realize this, but after every race that's used Race Ranger, and we've had a few, obviously we've had quite a few races in Challenge Family that use it, we are sent that data. So we get to see exactly who spent X amount of time in the red zone or the illegal drafting, basically. And that data is ours to keep as the race, and we can do whatever we want with it. Now, we've never done anything with it. We've just tucked it away in our back pocket, and life's gone on. And you do find, unfortunately, and it's human behavior, that you'll continue to push things till you can't get away with it anymore. And what was happening with Race Ranger, and what I felt watching it and being part of races where it was being used, is athletes were learning what they could and couldn't get away with. They were learning that if there was no official there, if the light was red and no one saw it, did it really happen? So when Sam Laidlow raised his hand and asked, is there an opportunity where we can start making this data public? Felix then asked the rest of the room, does anyone have a problem with it? Because if no one has a problem with it, we will release this data after
It's a good way to do it when,
the race.
you don't want to be the person saying no at that
no,
point.
exactly. I mean, that's and so I'm looking around the room and no one dares say a word. And so again, Felix asked again, I need to know. And even when we discussed it post-race, because we've been discussing it since the race finished because obviously we weren't just going to release the data and go, here you go, to the world, because I think that would have caused more issues than good. He sent an email out to all of the athletes again, asking them if anyone had any objection, and of course nothing. And so then we all got together and I said, well, I think there needs to be some education, because before we release this data, our audience needs to be educated on what they're actually looking at, and what that means and what it looks like. And I said, the worst thing for me, and here I am again, this is me being pro liaison, I'm being mother hen, I don't want this data to be released and all of a sudden all over social media there's going to be this awful finger pointing. He's a cheat, she's a cheat. Look how much time she spent in the red zone. Look, he only got that place because he cheated and got away with it. So we discussed it back and forth, and we finally came up with, and you'll see once it's released, obviously by the time this podcast comes out it will be released, that I think will educate our viewers and athletes to know what they're looking at and to see it. But again, on the other flip side, it's the athletes, it's asking them to take on more responsibility. And this is something that I think was lacking, is that we need good officials at races, and we need officials that actually do their job and pull athletes up when they're doing the wrong thing. But I think professional athletes also need to take responsibility back into their own hands. And now by releasing these results and this data, I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens in the next race if they know that the data is going to be released and those numbers will be up on screen. Because you could already see from last year when we used Race Ranger in Roth to this year, there was less drafting because they knew it was going to be made public. So it's worked already. And the intention is not to point fingers. It's just that we want to have fair and just racing. And Sam Laidlow, he nailed it. They do. They need to take more responsibility and more accountability for how they race.
I'll let Fede jump in. I'll let Fede jump in next, because I know he's big into this and even bringing it into the age group world too. And I just witnessed some horrific trains and drafting at the race I did, to the point where people are looking around for motorbikes. In the age group world. He wasn't looking back to see if I was drafting. He was looking to see if there was, and it was like on and on and on.
It's awful.
With the data that's coming out, is a lot of it scrubbing the fact that somebody might be passing a lot of people? Let's people like to use the Sam Long example.
Absolutely. Really, really good question. And this is the beauty. And this is James Overy, and obviously who owns Race Ranger. The man's a genius. He's brilliant. And his heart's in the right place. His head's in the right place. And I think what he's doing is going to change the sport. And what's coming up for Race Ranger down the track is going to be spectacular. And what he's able to do is, obviously with the Roth, the dynamic of the race in Roth, there are 3 climbs, and the main one being Solaraberg, and there is no overtaking. You've seen the crowd. There is no possibility. So, of course, every athlete going up Solaraberg is going to be right on the other one's hammer. There's no advantage there. Everyone's going slower. Second lap in particular when they're stuck behind age group athletes. So James was able to remove the 2 climbs, Kalvarienberg and also Solaraberg. And also we have a green zone 500 meters out of T1 and 500 meters into T2, where we were able to discount that as well. Plus he was able to take out every single aid station, because we don't want people missing aid stations, and we don't care if the lights are red coming in and out of an aid station. So we were able to take all of those sections out. And so what you are left with is the data on the rest of the bike course. So it's fairly, I would say, 99.9% accurate. The numbers that you see are accurate numbers. The only thing it doesn't do is obviously yo-yoing. Yo-yoing is probably the biggest thing. So where most people get their illegal time in. So obviously when you move in and the right in front of you starts flashing red, you go, oh shit, and you move out. But that's recorded, because what really should be happening as soon as you get the red, you really should make the move forward. And if you do that, you won't collect any time. But if you go back that whole time that it's red until you're out of the red, it will collect time. Yeah, it's interesting, but yeah.
Yeah, and
but it is accurate.
That is very cool to see. And it's interesting what you said about kind of the personal responsibility and what Sam had brought up, because we did see something like originally the T100 started using Race Ranger, but they had never ever given out a penalty.
No.
A lot of red lights on Race Ranger for those first few races.
And that's what I mean. Why bother having it? And imagine if they were able to release the data. 99% of athletes racing have a conscience. There are a couple that don't, but most of them do. And I don't think they want to see, 6 minutes next to their name. And by announcing this data, no one's getting a penalty. But when we move forward with Race Ranger, what it's going to be able to do, they're going to be able to do live updates for the officials. So the officials on motorbikes are going to be able to see it, whether they're there or not. They're going to be able to see certain numbers, and then they're going to be able to give penalties out regardless of whether they're there or not. So it could be, I think where Race Ranger is heading down the track is going to be, it's going to be a massive game changer.
Yeah, I was talking this week with my friends from Race Ranger, and we went down a rabbit hole of the things that they can do, and man, it's going to be
cool.
exciting for triathlon. Yeah, like everything that they're working towards, I think the future is bright for triathlon, and to make the races way more fair for athletes, pros and age groupers. So I think it's exciting.
Agree. I mean, it is, and we shouldn't look at this in a negative way. We shouldn't. I mean, it's easy for us to say, "Oh, everyone's cheating," but I think what's happening in our sport, which should happen, is our sport is continuing to evolve and grow and get better and more professional, and that's great. But then what ends up happening with that is you look at Roth and the difference in the men's and women's race, because we didn't have that many women racing in Roth this year, but we had some incredible men. And we knew that we were going to have a huge pack of men out of the swim, because I think it was probably the best group of swimmers that we've ever had in that race since 1984, since it began. And so we knew that there was the potential of it being a little difficult in the first, say, 20 to 30 kilometers of the bike. And I think Race Ranger, without Race Ranger, could you even imagine? I mean, it would have taken half of the first lap to separate these groups. But I think with Race Ranger, even though, it's not perfect yet, I think it's definitely a deterrent. And then making these results or these data public is yet another deterrent. But yeah, I can't wait till we move forward ahead again. And when it's all live and the officials are able to see it on their phones, on their devices, and actually see exactly who's cheating, then it'll be even better.
Is there any, I mean, we just had Scott Deroux on. We asked him the same question. We know the T100 goes to the 20 meters. Is there any discussion or a lot of discussion around 12 versus 20 within Challenge?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. We were actually the first Challenge family implemented the 20-meter rule. We've been running it for years now. Roth is different. So Challenge family, we obviously have races all around the world. Wherever, and particularly with any new races we have now, we don't give them a choice. We tell them it must be 20 meters. But majority of our races are 20-meter rule. We're trying to get it. It was one of the questions that actually Joe Skipper brought up in the pro briefing at Roth. And I think Felix can be convinced. The only place we get into trouble with that is the second lap. So the first lap, we could implement the 20-meter rule for the professional athletes, not a problem. For the second lap, it gets tricky because there's obviously 3,500 age group athletes on course, and it gets very crowded in sections. And so our biggest fear, particularly with the professional women, is that let's say we have Laura Phillip and Grace Tech riding 20 meters apart. What's to stop an age grouper who's running the 12-meter rule slotting in between? Technically, he or she's not doing anything wrong, but then all of a sudden, Grace Tech is now having to move back another 20 meters. She's now 40 meters behind her competition. I mean, we could maybe make a rule that, if age group, top age group men catch the pro women, they're not allowed to interfere with their race. But I mean, it's difficult because how do you, if there's not an official there to man that, and they slot in, who's to stop it? It's tricky. I mean, I still think that my viewpoint is we still should make it 20 meters in Roth, and I would love to see that, because I think 20-meter rule in Roth plus race ranger, game changer. Yeah. Absolute game changer. We use the 20-meter rule at our championship event in Samarin, and it makes it so fair. Every year, it's such a fair race, because 12 meters is, you are definitely still getting an advantage, massive, particularly if you've got a group of 12, 15 men all riding at 12 meters. Easy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
20 meters, no. So definitely. Yeah, that's the next step.
It's great to hear that there is some discussion around that, because it definitely sounds like a lot of the pros want it. And actually, over the years, I've done a couple of the challenge races in North America with Atlantic City and Penticton and stuff, but I have not made it over to Roth yet. It's one of those races I've always wanted to do. I have to ask you, is it as good as everyone says?
I raced it 10 times, and I've now worked at the other side 10 times, and I will continue going back there till they don't want me anymore. I never get sick of it. It's, again, I'm not saying it's the greatest, most important race in the world, but it is by far the greatest celebration of our sport in the world. All week, I mean, that expo, there is no expo in the world that is like it. It is just, if you can think about everyone that has anything to do with the sport in the world, all congregating in one small town for a week, and I mean, you can't wipe the smile off my face. I absolutely love it. I thrive in that environment, and the race day itself is just the icing on the cake, and it's the only race where every athlete, even though they might be absolutely exhausted, or even, after a full distance race, often you're very fatigued, you're sick, everyone comes back to the finish line, because you don't want to miss that finish and that laser show that they have at the end. And it's like a festival. It's a week-long triathlon festival, and it's just, it's incredible. And I always love it when we had quite a few first-timers this time, obviously in the pro field, which is unusual, and just watching their faces when they crossed the finish line, and secondly when they came back for the last athletes to finish and that big show they put on the end, and to watch that their eyes well up, they start to cry, because it's the reason that we all got into the sport in the first place. And it's just for the absolute sheer love of the sport of triathlon. It's amazing. I just love it. I actually go through depression afterwards. I literally go through depression for days afterwards.
I mean, it's like when you're racing too, it's hard to get back to that next training session after a big race and all the emotion that you put into it, especially something like Roth or Worlds. And in my case, just any 70.3. It's But what this year, I think we've seen in a couple races now what Jonas has done. What is your impression of that kid and what he's now translated from short course into the long distance world? And can he hold it all together through a run? Do you see that coming?
I absolutely do. I mean, he's not as young as we all think. I keep looking at him thinking he's in his early 20s. He's got such a baby face, but he's actually, I think he's early 30s, 31 perhaps. So he's been in the sport for a long time, but what he brings to the sport and what I love about what he brings, and it's his personality, is he's not scared to fail. He's not scared to lay it on the line. He was the only one in the press conference that said, I think Magnus Ditlev's record is doable. I think we can do it. I think I can get it. And I'm going to give it a red hot crack. And a lot of athletes are scared to lay it on the line because, one, they don't want to make a fool of themselves if they don't do it. But he doesn't care. And I love that attitude. I love that he's just, he went out on a mission to win that race. And particularly to pick himself up after what happened in Frankfurt with that mechanical. I mean, what are the chances of that happening? It was ridiculous. I had to watch it twice just to understand what had happened to the poor guy. And then I reached out to him. I was actually working at a race in Valsy, and Felix texted me and said, have you got Jonas's contacts? We need to get in. And so I said, I'm actually working a race right now, but no problem. Anyway, I sent him a WhatsApp while I'm out on the run course taking videos of the runners in Valsy. And I said, you know what are you doing next week? We want you in Roth. And, he didn't even hesitate. He said, yep, I'm coming. And I love that attitude. And I think we need more of that attitude. It's the reason that I think the women are now going to break sub 8, because we've got these fearless women that are like, I reckon we can do it. Why not? And now we've got Jonas in the men's field who will raise the bar, because by having that attitude, by laying it on the line at these press conferences, and then by actually doing it on race day, these other athletes are going to go, well, shit, if he's doing it, I'm going to do it. And this is how we see that bar continuing to be raised, because you've got these athletes like Jonas that are not scared to lay it on the line. And we need more of that. And then you find all the other athletes rise to the occasion. And I love it. Every year you see it. And I must admit, it's when short course athletes make their way in, because, short course athletes have that attitude. They've got to be red hot. They're either on or they're not. And I love when they bring that attitude to long distance racing. It doesn't always work. But eventually it does. And I think, Jonas will definitely be a player up the pointy end of the field in the next few years for sure.
Oh, it's so good. I love when the short course athletes come in. It's almost like they don't know the pain that's ahead with an Ironman, so they just lay it on the line and see what happens.
Love it. I should read. I actually reached out to, because I thought Hailey Lawrence had a spectacular race. I really thought she raced so well. And so I sent her, and in miserable conditions. Imagine that being, I've done Lake Placid, and it is a magnificent course. I love the course, the town. It's another one of those races that the town embraces it. They take it on as their own. It's just a wonderful weekend. But when the weather is like that, it doesn't matter where you are. It's just miserable. And so I just felt for all of those people doing their first ones. But she wrote to me and she's like, Jesus Christ, Belinda, Ironman is no joke. I nearly quit the whole sport during that race. And she's like, I actually don't know if I've got what it takes. And I just thought, this is just, and anyone that knows Holly, she's just so raw and so honest. And she's like, newfound respect for all you guys who were at the top for so many years, absolutely brutal. But that's how you feel, after your first one. But I can guarantee that this woman will be back and she will absolutely crush it, because she's got what it takes. And that first one is often, you just don't know what you're in for. And you're like, oh my God, what just happened? But,
less than 24 hours, she was holding that coin. So she's got one coming.
Exactly. And she, and in some ways, I like that her first experience was so tough, because she knows it can only get better from here, really. Just the mental side of racing in conditions where it's pouring rain, you don't even realize how much that takes out of you physically. It wears you down. So, she only needs to do a next one in nice sunny conditions. You should be like, this is a walk in the park. Should be fine.
Totally.
It's pretty amazing.
Oh,
yeah.
Now you were mentioning Roth on the finish line, and I think we've all talked on the pod that we want to get over there and do the race. All the three of us probably convinced Josh to be his first full, so I think it would be amazing. And
be a good one to do.
We need to get him
be a good one to do. Yeah, but I was gonna say a lot of pros speak very well of you. Like, you're this big sister for them, and you always treat them well, and you always make sure they're taken care of. But I'm gonna say you're also like that for the age groupers, and you might not remember this, but I think it was Challenge Wanaka, which is probably my favorite race of the whole world.
Yeah, beautiful
Challenge
race.
Wanaka, yeah, 2022 or 2023, can't remember which edition, but I was dying on the run course. I overbiked, obviously, and I was pursuing these guys, and you were standing right at the beginning of the run course cheering us on, and I was like, oh my God, Belinda Granger, pull it together. You got a fake. You're running really well right now. and you're like, great form, good job. And I'm like, oh no, I cannot disappoint her. I need to keep this up for the entire run. Yeah. And but you stayed for the entire race, supporting the pros, the age groupers, the last person crossing the finish line. So, I can speak for myself and for the whole triathlon community that you're there for the pros and for the whole, from the first to finish place. You're always there. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, I think because I started the sport as an age group athlete, and not a particularly good one. It wasn't like it all came easy for me from the start. You have respect for every athlete that makes their way onto a start line. It doesn't matter whether they're the best in their age group or one of the best pros, or just trying to make it to that finish line. That's their sole goal. And I think because where my grassroots, where I started to where I made it to, and just knowing what an incredible sport it is and what it's done for me personally, I love it. And I don't think, there are people that do the sport, then they get out and you never see them again. And that's fine. I mean, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that at all. But for me, it always was a way of life. I was just lucky enough to be good enough to make it a profession. So when I see people out on course, whether they're having the race of their life or they're struggling, I've been in both shoes. And so I know what it's like. And it's, so I'm always going to be out there supporting, whether you're a professional athlete or an age group athlete, and particularly a race like Wanaka. I was there. I was at the very first one that ever, I raced the first one and I loved it. And it's one of those events that's just, yeah. And it was so hard. Oh my God, it was hard. Those roads in New Zealand, you stop pedaling, you stop moving, what they're like, they're terrible. But it's such a beautiful race in a beautiful part of the world. And the year you did it was one of the hardest. That's one of the hardest 21Ks you'll ever do. I mean, it's on a mountain bike course. It's brutal. Yeah. They have moved it back into town now, so it's still hard, but it's nowhere near as hard. So you can at least be very proud that you did one of the hardest bloody 21Ks in the world.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
That was intense.
Yeah, well, I'm going to pile on what Fede said a little bit here too, because you were a big impact in me getting into triathlon as well. When I started, I was brand new to the sport, joined Macca's team, but you gave so much to the team, just offering advice and encouragement on a Facebook group at the time kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right. I loved it. I love that Macca X.
Yeah.
It was great fun. And, Macca and I, we met each other when we were both at university, and I literally had just started the sport. And it was the university games over in Perth, and he was a very good runner at the time, and he hadn't started triathlon. And I remember sitting on a ferry. We had some party on a ferry one night, and we started talking about the sport of triathlon. And I remember saying to him, you should see about getting into it. And, obviously the rest is history. He became one of the greatest athletes ever. But it's funny how it all starts. And I think it's that snowball effect. So there are athletes that had a real impact on me once I got into the sport. And then I think you owe it to keep passing that on. And I mean, it's the same with you, Jenna. I'm sure you're doing it now to many age group athletes that are out there. And I think that's the beauty of our sport. And I think it's the sort of personalities that our sport attracts as well, that a lot of us are givers. And I think that's why I love it so much still to this day.
The best community. Well, we have taken up a lot of your time here, so we've got a couple quick-fire questions we like to ask the athletes that come on our show here. Nothing too crazy, but we'll start off with, what's the weirdest thing you've ever eaten during training or racing? Have you ever just been bonked in the middle of nowhere or weird country and had something odd?
That's a really good question. It'd have to be, if it would be something that I ate that I had no idea. Some packaged good from a 7-Eleven in either Thailand, Phuket, or in Korea, because I trained there as well. Some packaged sponge cake sort of situation with God knows what sort of custard in between. But it'd be potluck what you actually were getting. And sometimes you'd nail it, it'd be great, and other times you'd be like, oh my gosh, what have I just eaten? But when you're desperate, you'll take anything to get you home.
Love it. If you had to race a triathlon again and partner with another pro to do it, who would it be and why? Now, this could be someone that would make you go faster or challenge you, or just someone that you'd want to spend the time that it takes to do an Ironman with.
Good question. Who would it be? Well, anyone that knows me knows that I never shut up, so I love talking. I think that's the only thing I get criticized on with commentary is that I talk too much. So it'd have to be someone. It wouldn't necessarily be. I think I'm older now, so I'm not as competitive as I used to be back in the day. So it'd be someone that I could just have a conversation with nonstop. So it'd probably be one of my girlfriends. So either someone like Beth McKenzie, because I'm thinking of triathletes now. It could have been any of my friends, or even actually, I love chatting to, and I went for a long run with her not long ago. Is Sam Laidlow's girlfriend, Milan Agnew. She's half my age, of course, but we just get on like a house on fire. I feel like I always say that I'm her mother away from home, because she actually lives in Brisbane. And her mum, I always say to her mum, whenever we're overseas, I'll be her mum for you. So I reckon Milan Agnew, she'd be good fun, because we would not shut up the whole way around.
I love it. Now, if triathlon had a fourth discipline that gives you the edge, what would it be?
Easy.
Would it be something like gymnastics or the after party? You're pretty good at
Oh,
those
no,
too.
no, it would have to be the after party, my friends. And drinking copious amounts of red wine, let's be honest.
I love it. When I got
the gymnastics side, I got to visit Andorra for the very first time this year when I was overseas, and I stayed with Emma Snowsell and Jan Frodeno, and I hadn't done any gymnastics for, 30 years. And I'd had a couple of red wines at a barbecue, and then they've got this backyard, and I started doing round-offs and round-off backflips. Cartwheels and round-offs, not backflips, round-offs with their daughter, Sienna. And so I think I could be actually okay in the gymnastics department if we made that a fourth leg as well.
There we go. That would definitely be a lot more entertaining to watch. Now, where would it go in the race?
Oh, I reckon you need to do it out of the swim. So you do the swim, and then you'd be forced to do a couple of round-offs, then jump on your bike, and then we'd incorporate some
onto the bike.
Onto the bike, that's right. And then I think if we're talking after parties and drinking, I mean, Joe Skipper actually had his beer mile the day after in Roth. So let's not do it the day after. Let's make sure we make everyone do a beer mile. I'll just do it as wine right after you cross the finish line. Then so make it five legs. There you go, perfect. And I reckon I'd win. I'd be back to winning again.
Yeah, it was funny. When I started triathlon, both you and Macca were at like the tail end of your careers and stuff. So there was definitely a lot more after parties.
I did a whole year of after parties. Don't you worry. Crazy.
Last question here. What's one piece of advice you've been given over the years that's really resonated with you?
Sometimes we get so caught up in the end result. And when I say end result, that end result is applicable to you and you only. But we get so caught up on times and end results that we forget about the journey along the way. And a really great example here is Laura Siddle lined up for Roth for last time and obviously didn't have the race that she had anticipated or that we know that she's capable of. And she was pretty devastated because she wanted to put on an incredible last performance. But I remember going up to her at the finish line and I said, you know what, Laura, right now it stings. I understand. I said, but in a year's time, you're not even going to remember what place you came or what time it was that you crossed the line. All you're going to remember was the journey to get there and the celebration on the finish line. So I think results are what drive us for sure, results and times. But at the end of the day, it is the journey that gets us there. And that celebration, the finish line is simply a celebration of all that hard work and effort put in and the fun that you had doing it. So just never forget the bigger picture when it comes to that. And I think that, as I said, that applies to everyone, whether you're a professional athlete or an age group athlete.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. That definitely resonates. And I know a lot of us are just looking towards the next goal every time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we need goals. I mean, short-term, long-term goals are absolutely needed, but at the end of the day, and I mean, it's easy because I can look back now at my career. And if you ask me, I think I can remember what my fastest time ever was, but not to the second. And, obviously I can rattle off some of my results. I can't remember all of them. And because at the end, that's not the most important part. But, I can tell you the best times I had. I can tell you the races that I loved, the people that I met at these races, the people I still know from races. So again, it's that journey, not necessarily the end result. Yeah.
So true.
Well, Belinda, where is the best way that people can follow you along and see what you're up to these days?
I mean, I'm not as I was saying before, I'm technologically a little backward, but I do have an Instagram account, obviously, which is what I try and update as much as possible. But yeah, that's probably the best place to get me. And obviously when I'm at events, I try and update as much as possible. But next race up for me, I think we've got a race in Uzbekistan, Challenge Samarkand, which is an incredibly well-run race. And then after that, of course, we've got Challenge Almere, which I'll be going over for, which is the European Long Distance Championship, which I do the live commentary for there, which is always great fun. Yeah.
Well, we will look forward to following it. Thank you again so much.
Thank you so much, guys. No, that's wonderful. I mean, it's so nice to be able to talk to like-minded people who I know love the sport as much as I do. getting sore cheeks from smiling too much. But yeah, I just
successful podcast then.
Yeah, I love it. We've got such a special sport and such an incredibly special community. Yeah, I feel very fortunate, that's for sure. So thank you.
Absolutely. Have a great day, and we appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.